Hello, my mystics. My name's Sparrow, and here in my little realm, we talk about all things eerie, whether it's of this world or not. Welcome to my channel. Today, we're going to be talking about the legend of the Bell Witch. It all takes place in present-day Adams, Tennessee, and it's about a spirit that haunted a family between 1817 and 1821. It was documented in newspapers and books, specifically one by Martin Van Buren Ingram. Curiously, the Bell Witch is the only spirit to claim responsibility for someone's death. Before we get started, I just wanted to give a quick shout out to anyone who's about to start National Novel Writing Month. If you don't know what it is, it's where authors come together in the month of November and write 50,000 words on a manuscript. It's so incredible. I used to do it. I love doing it. I ended up being more of a cheerleader than actually participating, but it was one of my favorite things to do, and next year I hope I can participate. But if you're about to start it, good luck. I know you can do it, and I would love to hear what your story's about. Comment down below with your stories. Oh, and I'll put a link down below for it. It's www.nanowrimo.org if you want to check it out. Now, we're going to start with the legend. This is going to be a long one. I am so sorry. I don't know how long it's going to be. I'm going to try my best to get through it. The haunting is said to have begun in 1817 when John was out for an evening stroll. He came face to face with a large beast with the body of a dog and the face of a rabbit. He was unable to kill it. Later that night, the family began to hear bangs, rattles, and chains outside their cabin. Each night, the sounds grew in intensity, and each night, John and his sons would run outside to try to catch someone, but nobody was there. One of the slaves claimed to see a large hound roaming the land. Drury, the third son of Lucy and John Bell Sr., was said to have seen a giant bird on the fence that led into the Bell farm. Betsy was said to have seen the apparition of a girl wearing a green dress swinging from a tree. Over the next few weeks, the children began to wake up terrified, thinking rats were gnawing on their bedpost. They also started to complain that their blankets were being pulled off of them while they slept, and their pillows were thrown on the floor. But the haunting didn't stop there. The family began to hear a whispering voice. It sounded sort of like a feeble old woman singing hymns, but they could never quite make it out. But things took a turn for the worse for Betsy. The entity targeted her and started slapping her repeatedly and pulling her hair. This would leave Betsy with handprints and welts on her skin. The attacks got so bad that they could no longer keep the family secret. John Bell Sr. confided in his closest friend and neighbor, James Johnston. He and his wife decided to stay in the Bell homestead to see if this was really going on and to try to help his friend. But they were subject to the same terror that the Bell family was going through. After having the bed covers pulled off and being slapped repeatedly, Johnston was said to have leapt from his bed and exclaimed, "In the name of the Lord, who are you and what do you want?" There was no response, but nothing happened for the rest of the night. Kinda interesting that they invoked the Lord's name and nothing else happened. Over time, the entity's voice became unmistakable. It sang hymns, quoted scripture, and even carried out conversations. It was also said to have quoted 2 sermons, word for word, spoken at the same time on the same day, 13 miles apart. They began to communicate with the spirit to try to figure out what it wanted with them, but the Bell Witch just decided to lead them on a ghost chase. It told them several things. First, it said it was a Native American whose body had been disturbed. It actually said it was looking for its missing tooth. A few years earlier, 2 of the children had found this skull in the woods and carried it inside, and supposedly a tooth had fallen out. When they heard this, they went and ripped up all the floorboards, searching under everything for the tooth. Soon they learned ripping up the floorboards was not going to help them find the bone. The spirit mocked those trying to help look for the tooth and declared its sole purpose was to torment old Jack, as the spirit liked to call John Bell Sr. The next thing that the entity told them, it said that it was a North Carolina child spirit, and it died because John didn't do something or did something. According to that story, it haunted the family out of vengeance. The spirit also claimed to be the soul of an early settler who buried a large quantity of gold and wanted Betsy to have it. Now here's where it gets interesting. In 1819, General Andrew Jackson, who would later become the 7th president of the United States, visited the farm to see if the rumors were true. Jackson was particularly curious because he actually knew some of the Bells. John Jr., Drury, and Jesse Bell were all in his company in the Battle of New Orleans. Before he even got there, his travel caravan ran into some issues. As they neared the property, the wagon just stopped and the horses weren't able to pull it. They kept trying and trying to see if something was broken on the wagon, to dig out the dirt from under it, hoping that that was it. They did everything they possibly could to try to get those horses to pull the wagon, and nothing worked. Finally, Jackson shouted, "By the eternal, boys, that must be the Bell Witch!" It was said that the Bell Witch's voice could be heard welcoming them to the property and told them that it would see them that night. One of the men with Jackson said that he was a witch tamer and even produced a gun with a silver bullet inside that was said to be able to kill any evil spirit that it came in contact with. After a few hours of waiting for something to happen, the man started to get boastful, saying, "Well, it must be afraid of my silver bullet." As if he spoke it into existence, immediately he started screaming and twitching and convulsing as if something was poking him. He said that his skin was crawling and it felt like somebody was poking him over and over and over with pins, and also that somebody was beating him up. After a kick in the rear end to send him out the front door, the entity announced there was another fraud in Jackson's midst, and the next night it would be back to torment the fraud. His men begged him to leave, but Jackson didn't want to hear about it. He wanted to know who that fraud was. It's not sure what exactly happened, but for whatever reason, Jackson and his men actually left that night, late into the night, without telling anyone. They were later seen in the next town over near Springfield, probably going back to Nashville. But it's never really said why they left that night. As Betsy Bell grew older, she fell in love with the neighbor boy, Joshua Gardner. To their delight, their parents gave their blessing, and everybody was happy for them. Well, not everyone. The entity wasn't having it. It warned her not to marry Joseph, and if she did, something terrible would happen. The entity continued to torment her so badly that finally she called off the engagement in 1821. After Betsy called off the engagement, the entity turned all of its focus onto John Bell Sr. He experienced facial twitching and trouble swallowing, and it only got worse from there. By 1820, he was confined to the house due to his health. The entity liked taking off his shoes while he walked and even slapping him during his seizures. The entity's voice was often heard around the house and farm, mocking and cursing old Jack Bell. John Bell Sr. died December 20th, 1820. He was found with a small vial of a strange liquid next to his bed. It looked like his medicine bottle, but they all agreed it definitely wasn't, and what was inside certainly wasn't his medicine. John Jr. took the vial and put a small drop of the liquid onto the cat's tongue. That the cat screeched and jumped in the air, and by the time it hit the ground, it was dead. John Jr. threw the vial into the fire and it burst into a bright bluish flame and shot up the chimney. At John Sr.'s funeral, it said that the preacher couldn't be heard over the laughing and the singing of the entity at his demise. She didn't stop singing until every last person left the graveyard. But after Bell's death, the entity was basically non-existent at the house. In April 1821, the entity came back to visit Lucy Bell and warned her it would be back in 7 years. And as it promised, it was back in 1828 to speak with John Jr. John Jr. didn't really want to listen to him, but the entity would not stop until he started writing it down. The entity talked to him about the origin of life, Christianity, civilizations, and the need for a mass ritual reawakening. It also made several accurate predictions about the Civil War and other events. After 3 weeks, the entity said farewell, but warned that it would be back in 107 years to visit the closest descendant of John Bell Sr. The year would have been 1935. The closest living direct descendant of John Bell Sr. at the time was Dr. Charles Bailey Bell of Nashville. He wrote a book about the Bell Witch in 1934, but he never wrote a sequel to the book, so we don't actually know if he got a visit from the Bell Witch. So here are some of the facts that we actually know about the history of the family. John Bell Sr. married Lucy Williams Bell in North Carolina. They had 5 children before moving to Tennessee. Those children were Jesse, John Jr., Drury, Esther, and Zadok. He brought his family to the area in 1804, where they went on to have Betsy, Richard, and Joel. He had a farm that was about 328 acres along the side of the Red River. He was an elder at the Red River Baptist Church, and he also held the deed to the property. But what's even more interesting, even though he was an elder there and attended regularly, his family didn't. There were no records of them being actual members of the Baptist Church, and that's really strange. Everybody went to church back then. If you didn't, you were seen as an outsider, and basically there were not good inclinations if you did not go to church. But being an elder doesn't excuse you from everything. He was actually excommunicated by the church in 1818, which was actually at the height of the Bell Witch disturbance. But he wasn't excommunicated because of the dealings with the Bell Witch. Benjamin Batts, Kate Batts' husband, and John Bell had a disagreement about the cost of a slave. Bell said that he had taken an unlawful interest, for which Batts claims Bell never lent him any money at all. Bell claimed that he purchased the slave girl from Batts for $100. He said that he paid him $100 but didn't actually take possession of the girl because either she was too young or he just thought she should stay with her mother a little bit longer. But when he finally went back to get the slave, Batts insisted that the girl was actually worth more than he originally sold her for, and he insisted on selling her again. Bell told Batts that he would sell the girl back to him for $150. A few days later, Mr. Batts came back with $150, or what he said was $150, to get the slave girl back. But Bell said when he counted it, it was only $120. But he accepted the money, he was fine with it, and with that, he gave up the girl and burnt the deed of sale. The Red River Baptist Church minutes later state, Brother Bell was found guilty of the first charge, but gave satisfaction for the second charge and the specifications. The question was taken whether Bell's acknowledgments for the first charge were satisfactory. Answer, no. Whereupon the vote was taken, and he, the said John Bell, was excommunicated from our fellowship. Another fact we know, Betsy Bell did not marry Joshua Gardner. Betsy Bell actually later went on to marry Richard Powell in March of 1824. I'm going to talk about Richard a little bit later, but here's the thing. Richard was her school teacher. Not just that, he was 11 years her senior. They went on to have 8 children together. Only 4 of them reached adulthood, and 1 of them died at age 23 during the Civil War. So now we're going to talk about the theories. Who was the Bell Witch? It could have been multiple different things, and I think a lot of contributing factors happen, but I want to know what you think. Tell me what your theories are down below if you have any. I'm just going to break down some of the different theories that I've run into, kind of talk about who it could be or what it could be. Theory 1, Kate Batts. Theory number 1 is the one that's most talked about, Kate Batts being the Bell Witch. From Ingram's book, it actually states that the entity claimed to be old Kate Batts. So the thing we have to know about Kate Batts is she was actually Lucy Bell's niece, at least from certain documentation. We don't know much about Lucy Bell, but we do know she had a brother, and that brother had Kate or Katie Williams, and Lucy Williams married John Bell Sr. I've heard several theories about Kate, like she was a fiance of John's. When he moved on to marry Lucy Bell, she was outraged and threw herself in the river, and that's how she became a Bell Witch. Now, usually back in those days, the husband ran the farm, but Benjamin Batts didn't do much of the running of the farm. Kate actually took care of everything. She also looked after her kids. Not a lot of people liked Kate. She was loud, she was eccentric, she was mean, she was moody, but she was also a really wise businesswoman. She was known for speaking her mind and not liking John Bell. She usually walked to town with 2 of her slaves and a horse, but never actually rode the horse. She was notorious for her attitude. Kate Batts always came to church late with 2 of her slaves. On one occasion, there was a man down front praying on his hands and knees. When she arrived, instead of taking her seat in the back pew like she usually did, she walked all the way to the front and sat on him. As she sat on him, her hoop skirts and all swallowed him, so much so that he thought he was being overcome by God's Spirit and shouted something along the lines of, "Help, I can't breathe! God, take me!" Theory 2, witch. Now, we all know Puritans had a few issues. They thought they were God's chosen people, and if you didn't believe what they believed, you were wrong and you were consorting with the devil. As such, it was their duty to protect themselves and their families from evildoers. And we all know what happened in Salem when people thought they were protecting everyone from witches. Theory 3, spirit. Ingram's book actually claimed that the spirit said it was old Kate Batts. The only problem is, Kate Batts died 20 years after John Bell Sr. did. So how was she haunting him? Theory 4, occult. Now, this one I find particularly interesting because I just ran into this one and it kind of blew my mind because I didn't think of it right away. So there's some rumors surrounding Richard Powell, who was the school teacher of Betsy Bell and later married her. But some theorize he actually might have been some sort of occultist. He was married to Esther Scott, a woman 18 years his senior, and while she was living in Nashville, he was living in Red River teaching. And during the time he started expressing the fondness for Betsy Bell, his wife was still alive, and she was actually engaged to Joshua. His wife died in 1821, the same year that Betsy Bell called off her engagement with Joshua Gardner. And only 3 years later, she was married to Richard. Theory 5, goblin. Here's where we get into semantics with theory number 5. So, we talked about witches, we talked about spirits. Now we're going to talk about goblins. The Encyclopedia of Ghosts and Spirits defines a goblin as any type of small, hideous, mischievous, or evil spirit. In some cultures, putting the prefix hob on the front of it actually changes it from being an evildoer to actually a helpful spirit. But even though it's a helpful spirit, it's still full of mischief. Puritans, of course, they didn't agree with anything. They used the term to describe any little nasty creature. In French folklore, goblins are wandering spirits who attach themselves to households. They alternately help and plague the residents, depending on their whims. Goblins are believed to live in grottos, but are attracted to homes with beautiful children and lots of wine. When they move in, they help by doing household chores at night, disciplining the children, giving them presents when they're good, or punishing them when they're naughty. Goblins have an unpredictable, mischievous nature. On some nights, instead of being helpful household spirits, they keep the family up all night, banging pots and pans around, moving furniture around, knocking on doors and windows, and snatching bedclothes off of sleeping people. Theory 6. Native Americans. Native Americans used to live along the Red River where the Bell property was. The possible tribes that could have lived there are Shawnee, Chickasaw, or Cherokee. The Shawnee were kind of known for being in the area, but the Chickasaws on 2 different occasions actually pushed the Shawnee further out of Tennessee, or at least further up. So I'm not really sure whose territory it was, but those are 3 of the different tribes it could have been. If you know of any other tribes it could have been, please leave them down below. Or if you know anything about these tribes or this area, I would love more information about this. The Bell family actually found evidence that Native Americans were buried there. There were actually Indian burial mounds that were found, and I believe either flattened or are just on some of the private Bell property that you can actually see now. There was actually the skeleton remains of a Native American girl that was found in the Red River probably about 40 to 20 years ago. They had those bones tested and they were very old. I think between 2,000 and 5,000 years old at that point. I don't remember exactly for sure. I heard it on the tour and of course didn't take that number to memory. But after finding her body and getting her tested, they figured out what tribe she might have been a part of and looked at their burial rituals, and they used those burial rituals to bury her into the Bell Witch Cave. And I'll show you different pictures where they have a hole in the ground that's all set up where the skeleton remains used to be. Someone actually stole her skeleton remains and nobody knows what happened to her. Theory 7, ergot poisoning. Now, if you haven't heard of ergot poisoning, it's kind of a big thing. Ergot poisoning is when rye grains become wet and start to mold and a fungus grows on them. And this fungus is actually a hallucinogen. Some people will think crazy things are happening to them and they're actually just kind of stoned. Except this kind of stoned is super poisonous. Eating contaminated foods can cause violent muscle spasms, vomiting, delusions, hallucinations, crawling sensations on the skin, gangrene, unconsciousness, and even death. And ergot poisoning is thought to be one of the many contributing factors of the Salem witch trials.
Do the honors.
Try to ever do that good squeaky.
Oh my goodness. Look what I noticed. You see what's on there? Can you see it? There you go. Do you see what's on the edge of those tombstones? Did you just smack me?
Yep.
Why are you smacking me?
Because there was a big ass mosquito.
Oh, well thank you. That's why you smacked me. Mm-hmm. Liar. It's the Mason symbol. If any of y'all know what the star stands for, please comment below.
The witch's star.
Is it the witch's star?
Because the pentagram.
Oh, sorry.
Pentagram deal. An elongated end.
Sorry.
That doesn't have an elongated end.
Well, the pentagram isn't really a sign of evil, even though people say it is.
The one with the elongated end is.
Wait, okay.
Satanic.
She was married to Clarence. Clarence was a Mason. Does that mean maybe she was like a Mason's wife, maybe? Is that... Maybe that's what it's for? Speculating, but I'd love to hear the actual...
Looking like it because these two were married as Because
She got a star. Oh, but she's got an OES on hers.
maybe that's original
Oh, wait, no.
gangster.
This one has it too. It's just not as strong. So
Mary Laura Porter and Charles Wood.
Did the Bell Witch cause your death? Okay. I'm so sorry. Was it a accident of some kind? Okay. Was it a car wreck? Okay. Back to straight? Okay, back to neutral. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Was it a car accident? Okay.
Do you know which one it was over there?
It said I wouldn't have been able to guess. Were you a child? Were you under 10 years old? Were you under 15 years old? Were you under 20 years old? Okay, you were under 20 years old. Thank you for letting me know. Okay. Are you 16 years old when you died? Okay. Were you 17 years old when you died? Okay.
19.
Were you 18 years old when you died?
19.
Were you 19 years old? Yeah. You kind of caught that one. Okay. Thank you for letting me know. Thank you. Thank you. If you can answer on the voice recorder how the Bell Witch caused your accident, I would really appreciate it. I really hope you're coming through, that you're giving me the yes. Thank you so much for coming through. Okay, and just to kind of confirm where we are, can you point to the Bell Witch Cave? Okay. Can you point to the Bell Witch Cemetery? Oh, sorry, we're in the Bell Witch Cemetery. My bad. Sorry. I'm so sorry. Okay, back to neutral. Thank you. I'm sorry. Do you forgive me? Okay,
Did you die
thank you.
recently?
I would say that's a no. Did you die within the last 50 years? Okay. Did you die within the last 25 years? Okay. Did you die...
Last 2 years.
No, it said no to the 25.
Okay. Well,
Did you die in the last 30 years? Did you die in the last 40 years? Did you die in the last 45 years? Did you die in the last 50 years? Okay, so it's closer to 50 years ago or so. Can you point to the Bell School? Okay. Can you point to John Bell Sr.'s farm? Is that where he said it was? I think he said it was over there. Can you point to John Bell Jr.'s land? Okay, that sounds about right.
died in 1960s.
Died in 1960s, you think? Did you die in the 1960s? Okay. Was there a war going on during that time?
No.
You don't? Okay.
Well, Vietnam was later, like end of 60s, 70s, early 70s.
Okay, did you have anything to do with the Vietnam?
Vietnam War.
Okay. Did you die
Later
during the
60s.
Vietnam War?
Latter 60s.
Did you die in the Vietnam War internationally? Okay. Did you die in the Vietnam War in a car accident? I wonder how that would have worked. I wonder if this is
Well,
true.
Their vehicle.
I'm gonna try to research this when we get home.
Is there not one over there that died in the 60s?
I don't know. I didn't look for one in the 60s.
I saw the thing in 63 maybe.
Okay.
Not latter 60s
I
though.
don't know.
Hmm.
We'll have to look into that.
Yeah.
Should I be asking any more questions before we leave? Okay. What kind of
I'll
question?
keep you here all night.
Do you just want us to stay? Okay.
Yeah.
I can't stay here all night. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. I can't. I really can't. I'm so sorry. Will you be okay if I leave? I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, but you do have to stay here. I'm so sorry, but you can't come home with me.
Yeah.
Please don't come home with me, okay? Okay. Thank you for agreeing to not come home with me. Can you think of anything else we could ask?
No. Are you at peace or something?
Okay. If you do know anything about the curse, did one of the children kill John? I wonder. Did John die of arsenic poisoning?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Was the Bell Witch caused by ergot poisoning? That's curious. Curiouser and curiouser. Oh, hi there. Did the Bell Witch come to be without the ergot poisoning? Okay. So the ergot poisoning made the Bell Witch worse. Okay, that could make sense. Is the Bell Witch Kate Bass? I mean, I'm so sorry I pronounced that wrong. Kate Batts. Is the Bell Witch Kate Batts? Okay. Is the Bell Witch part of a Native American legend? Okay. Is the Bell Witch something that was here before everything? Okay. Is the Bell Witch a Cential? Okay. Is the Bell Witch a elemental? Curious. Okay. Were you ever alive? Oh, wait a second.
Has anybody ever really been alive?
No, but here's the question. I said, have you ever been alive? And it said no. As in, I might not be talking to the Bell family. Am I talking to the Bell family? Am I talking to the Bell Witch? They stuck together again? I don't like that. Am I talking to the Bell Witch?
Please don't come home with me.
Are you gonna come home with me? Thank you, I appreciate that. Is Vernon related to the Bell Witch? Is Vernon related by blood? Okay. Is Vernon related by marriage? I always wonder, it's like, do these kind of act psychically? Do they're like, oh, well, you know the answer, so I'm just gonna do what you think? Or is it like, that's what I was, do you work psychically? Oh, am I telling you which answers to give? Okay, well, that's nice. Well, we are gonna wrap this up. If there's anything else you can...
The last thing I'm going to talk about, I kind of touched on it in my vlog if you haven't seen that. When we got home from Adams, Tennessee, I actually noticed a kind of wound scratch on my neck. It was in the same place that my necklace was, so I obviously know it was my necklace that did it. But the strange thing was, all day I kept feeling like my necklace was getting tugged on or pulled at, and it just kept getting heavier and heavier. And also it went in between feeling really, really hot and really, really cold on my skin. I just kept getting this thought coming through my head. It keeps getting heavier, you need to take it off. And the thing is, I've had that necklace 7+ years. I've never gotten any sort of mark like that. I've been sweaty in that necklace. I've showered in that necklace. I've swam in that necklace on accident. So I've been through it with that necklace. I know what it does and what it doesn't do. But for whatever reason, I had a mark all the way around my neck from my necklace, and it was really worrisome, especially the fact that something that day just kept telling me to take it off. And what was so scary about that is I put that necklace on as a protection. It's something I do every time I go doing something sort of spooky, or even when I'm just feeling stressed out or I'm gonna be around a lot of people. So it's just a way to calm myself. It's a way to protect myself. And by wearing it, I feel protected. And that morning when I put it on with the intention of adding an extra layer of security to myself. And apparently that didn't help. Or it helped, and I got backlash for protecting myself in some way. The first time I went there, I didn't experience anything too crazy. I might have gotten a picture or two, and that was about 5-7 years ago when I went. But what makes it even better, on the entire drive up there, Vernon was joking that he was going to steal a rock, and I kept telling him that if he did, he wasn't getting in a car with me going home. And he jokingly put one of the rocks from the path leading from the cave into my purse, and it was only in my purse probably less than a minute. I got it out, I threw it back, but maybe the damage was done? I know, I'm overthinking it. It's probably something super normal. I just find it really odd that something was trying to compel me to take it off, that it kept feeling heavier, like something was tugging on it. It's a little weird. So tell me what you think down below. I'd love to hear from you.
If you've liked what you've seen here, hit that like button. If you're new to my channel, hit that subscribe button and click the little bell icon to be notified of whenever I post. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter to never miss a update from me and watch me be a little accident prone. But that said, I hope you have an enchanting week ahead of you. I love you so much. What was the other thing? I don't remember what the last part was.
T-Rex arms.
T-Rex arms. T-Rex arms. T-Rex arms. Okay. Wait until...
It's so horny outside right now.
It's so horny outside right now? Is that what you said? Way to pun. He's such a punner. He's so punny.
Turbo puns.
What'd you say?
It's the turbo puns.
Next, you're going to see an interview with Tim Henson where he really kind of tells us some little extra details, things that might be interesting of the history and even the tale of the Bell Witch.